Stories that touch your heart. Barb's Beats.
At times, it seems there's so much negativity around us, from the news stories we read and hear to coworker or friend complaints. There are days we're awash in information that's not uplifting. This podcast is intended to provide a respite for your ears and a few minutes to hear stories that touch your heart. These stories come from people who volunteer their time to help others. People who've come out from the grip of addiction. All types of people who have a story to share. Hopefully, the lessons they've learned can help us on our life journey. My name is Barb Volbrick, and I plan to update this podcast with new stories every week. Also, I've placed additional information on the people I've interviewed on storiesthattouchyourheartpodcast.com. My first story focuses on Kris Holodak, a filmmaker and digital media professor at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Like many of us, Kris's path to this career went in different directions as she tried to figure out what she wanted to do with her life. I'm hopeful her story touches your heart and encourages you to pursue your passion.
Hi, I'm Kris Holodak, and I'm a filmmaker, and I've been making films kind of seriously for 8 or 10 years now. Less seriously for probably 8 or 10 years before that. But I've been making images all my life, and that comes from the very first image I ever made, when my dad handed me his camera while we were on vacation, sort of like let me hold it, and said, okay, you can hold it, but don't touch any of the buttons. And of course I touched the buttons. Come on! It was the Olympic Stadium in Montreal. That's my first image, and somewhere in a box in my attic is that slide. I just sort of always felt at home behind the camera. Felt like the world is really interesting, and if I look at it just a little tilted differently, just, if I look at it from behind or from underneath or from looking down or just the idea that you can take something that everybody sees and everybody walks by all the time and you can look at it differently and then use a camera to capture that and show it to people and say, look at this thing that you don't even notice, but look how cool it is. And I thought, well, I really love this photography thing, but I can't see making a living at it. So TV's kind of cool. What if I make it moving images? That might be fun. And so I did broadcasting. But that was the image I had of what I might do professionally, was still running around with a camera. That didn't happen. Well, how did I become a filmmaker? God, I don't even know, really, in some ways. Because, I started out taking film, slide film photographs, and then TV, but not. And then I drifted off into doing educational media, which was great. And so at first it was like, wow, you're going to pay me for that? That's great. Because, I got to have a camera, and I got to shoot things, and I got to write and direct and produce and shoot and edit. And I didn't get to pick my stories, but whatever, they were paying me. That was cool. And I did that for a long time, probably 10 years. Once I got it, I'm like, oh, this is fun. Done. Good. Go. And it was making media, but it wasn't making films. It wasn't like when I say I'm a filmmaker, that's a different thing than what I was doing professionally. But it requires all the same sort of skill set. Know how to use a camera, and I have to know the impact of lighting, and I have to be able to record good sound, and I have to work with people and all of that sort of stuff. I think I became a filmmaker because I was doing this thing that I liked, this, cameras, lights, sound stuff that I liked, but always doing it for other people, always doing other people's stories. And I thought, well, I have my own stories. I have things I think I want to say. And I like this medium, and this is a medium that can reach people emotionally. You can really make a connection with people through film. And I thought, if I took this seriously, I bet I could do it for real. And so I wrote a story, and I just sort of did it. And I didn't have any idea what I was doing necessarily. I had never written a script before. And so I wrote this thing. And I showed it to one of my friends. And she's like, yeah, I think you might have something here. I said, I just feel like I need to hear it. I need somebody else reading it, not in my head. And she was very active in community theater and said, well, I got some friends who would probably, you buy them coffee and donuts and they'll sit around their kitchen table and read it for you. And I was like, that'd be great. I remember this vividly. I didn't know them at the time. They're good friends now, but I had never met them. And I knock on their door with coffee and donuts and a script. And said, hi, will you read my film? And I don't know if we're ever going to make it or not. This is kind of just a writing exercise. And they were like, yeah, come on in. And we sat around their table and they read it. And it was the most amazing experience. Like, this story that had been in my head was suddenly sort of real, tangible. I'm not sure I can articulate it for you, but it was so amazing. And it's still, every time I workshop a script with real actors, I get that same kind of thrill, this little charge inside me of like, oh my God, that's not me anymore. That's like, there it is. And then we ended up making that film over the summer. And it played in festivals. And once I did that, I thought, heck yeah, I want to do this. And I've done probably, 8 films, 10 films since then that have all screened in festivals and played around the country. And now I'm a filmmaker.
Stories that touch your heart. Barb's Beats.